Well, hello Internet! Welcome to my first ever attempt to make a coding tutorial. Today we'll be learning how to build games in React. I'm assuming that you have some basic coding knowledge, preferably in JavaScript or maybe in React. If not, there is plenty of tutorials out there to learn about those things. And also, I will try to make it easy as well. A little introduction, my name is Chris and I work as a front-end engineer at Thought Machine. And by the way, we're hiring, so if you are around London or want to move in, please apply. And yeah, that's about it. Let's get into it. So let's first look at what we're gonna build. So as you can see, this is very simple kind of Pokemon Red clone. Let me just check something. Okay. And yeah, you can see this is just basic map rendering with moving a character around. And this is built purely in React and Redux. So if you know about Redux, you know that it has awesome DevTools. So this is standard DevTools for Redux. And if I refresh, I don't know what's going on with my computer. If I refresh and let's say move left, we can see all the states that the game is represented by. So the state doesn't hold all the data because this is like very rough prototype, but the most important data that's changing, it's in Redux, and that's what triggers animations and rendering of many things. Those animations, those animations are not in the state. So to give a little introduction into Redux, that's basically, if you know how JavaScript object looks like, Redux is all around having one huge JavaScript object that you manipulate and kind of trigger events that cause manipulation of this huge object that are called actions. And then you have someone that listens to the changes and says, oh, this changed, I will render things differently or do something different. It's not really tied to anything like rendering, but mostly it's used for React rendering in HTML, and in this case we're rendering on canvas. So let's see what's happening here. We have a game object that consists player and controls. Player consists position, and that's basically representing where the player is on the map. And when we press a key, that triggers an action. That action makes this kind of change to the global state. So you can see this kind of represents like user intent to move. That doesn't necessarily mean that player will move in that direction. For example, if it's already moving in some direction, that will not change the transition. But in this case, there was no transition happening, so a transition started, and that is represented by putting a destination onto the player and direction, which is just an additional helper, like to visually see what's going on. And then there's a rendering layer that renders the map and all the objects and sees, oh, there's a destination, so that means we have to animate between those 2 points. And when it finishes the animation, it says, oh, I finished, so move ended. And then that action causes to destroy those things, and that causes to transition to stop. And that's basically how Redux works with like React and other rendering libraries. There's also key release, so we released the key before the animation ended. That's just deletes the intent of the user to move. So if we wouldn't release the key, it would continue to move in that direction, obviously. So there was another key press, again in the west direction, that caused to put destination again, and that's basically the same story. And so let's move twice, and you can see, so there's key press, animation started, animation finished, and that already, because key was still pressed at the point, so key was released after, that made the animation to continue. So this should actually be named maybe continue, but anyway, then we released the key and then animation stopped. And what's cool about Redux is you can jump to any state and like debug stuff or see what's going on. So we've been here, we released the key, animation stopped, we press the key again, and then animation started again, animation stopped, etc., etc., etc. And that causes some actions because it's not perfect yet, but yeah, so this is like a simple prototype that we're going to build in React and Redux. I'm using Pixi Fiber, React Fiber, something like that. Oh, this library to render, instead of using the HTML render, I mean, still using HTML, but using canvas. So rendering directly onto the canvas. And yeah, that's it. So let's get into it. So what's the setup for that? Let's go to my GitHub. I'll put links down below, and what we need to do, we need to clone this. So first of all, you need to have a Git. If I'm assuming you probably have it, but if you don't, you need to install it. So open a terminal and cd into directory that you want to have the project in. And just git clone the URL. And then just check out the branch streaming. I know it's a terrible name. It was supposed to be streaming. Okay. You have to cd the directory and check out the branch streaming. I will leave it as it is, so so it's like a starting point. It's like a blank, like boilerplate project. So also you need to have Node.js. If you don't have it, Google how to install it and install it. It's pretty simple. And to check if you have it, you just go npm version. Okay, I have npm, so I go npm install. That will download all the packages for the repo. Let me just check if I'm recording correctly. Yes, okay. And so let's arrange things a bit. Where did I put it? Tutorials. Let me open it in VS Code. So open the clone directory, the repo, in your editor of preference. Now, since we installed all the libraries, we can just start. I'll just arrange things a bit so it's easier. So this is just my website. Let's go to localhost 8080. And you should see this little bunny. There's some error, doesn't matter, I'll fix it later. Okay, so let's have a look at the project. There's a bunch of files that just make it much quicker to start. So there's kind of like this responsive part to it, so it's easier to develop it in it. And there's some simple assets. This is like a Redux configuration. We don't use it yet, but we'll use it later. Some basic styles. A bunch of users that are not used yet, so we'll use them later. I will go into them later as well. And this is like just one main file that starts the whole thing. So we actually can delete this thing for now. What's going on? So let's delete this. Sorry for that. Yeah. So what's happening here? We need to import React for this guy here. This is JSX. If you don't know what it is, it's basically a special flavor of JavaScript that React started, that will compile into React specific functions. So it would be like, I think, create element, sprite, and like texture. I think that should work as well. It will be in the corner here. Yeah. So it's kind of like this. It's just like a sugar, syntactic sugar on top of that. And so what you have seen there was kind of like a representation of a component in React. What component in React is, it's something that most likely is gonna be rendered onto your rendering target. And React can have multiple rendering targets. In this case, we're using Canvas and we focus on that, but most of the people actually use it directly manipulating multiple elements of HTML. So you basically say, oh, render a div for me with a span inside, right? Something like that. But here we're using Pixi, so this is Pixi's React Pixi fiber specific thing. It's like an alternative renderer for React. So the basic principle of React is that it optimizes the rendering by checking out the difference between certain states. So let's have a simple function called greeting, and that will take a polite boolean and append string. Okay, what it does, it will just return a string. So if polite, you go welcome, but if not polite, we go okay. It's a simple example, but we'll demonstrate what I mean by how React diffs things. So if you go greeting and go polite true, and let's make this thing optional. So we just see welcome, right? If you go polite false, and we'll go like this, we get what up man. And so, but if we go true and go man again, come on, we see that it's welcome again because it didn't append anything. So even though the arguments has changed, the result of the function is the same. And that's what's happening with components. So you will have things like if something return, let's say a player, and else return a monster, right? This is a very simple example. And React doesn't really care what's happening inside of this function. It just cares about the result. And so when you define the JSX tag, this like XML kind of tag, it's basically a function that will get those props. So these are static props right now, hard coded, but they will be dynamic in future. And React will just call them over and over again, and we'll see, oh, now the result has changed. I have to go into the canvas and, let's say, draw a sprite in this position instead of this position, because the props, the arguments has changed. So, and the argument changing not always mean that there will be something different rendered. So therefore, React is smart and says, oh, I've checked the function again, but the result is the same, so I don't touch the canvas at all. And that's what's great about React in DOM. I'd say with Pixi it doesn't matter that much as in DOM, because Pixi itself is very optimized. But what's great about React is its declarative style, which I love, and that's why I thought it's a fun project to work on, and that's why I started to do this game in React. So, what kind of benefits it gives you? So let's say we have a container. Container, as you can imagine, is a container that affects its children. So right now it will make no difference whatsoever because I didn't pass any values to the container. But if I go position, new point, 0, 10, come on, it moved the bunny by 10 pixels. So let's go position 32, and let's go rotation 0.15. How do you think it's gonna end up looking? Will it rotate in place, like against this point? Nope. It rotated against a quarter of the screen, I guess. Is it? Yeah, I think so. It's 128. So this is somewhere where the container sits. Then I rotated the container, and the bunny rotated against that point. You can see it clearly. I go 0.3. Yeah, so it's somewhere around here. And now if I put the same rotation onto the bunny itself, we refresh first. So this is where the bunny sits. Now the bunny rotated in place. So with this kind of stuff we can do a lot of cool stuff, and as well, because of a declarative functional style of React, it's very scalable. So building large apps, which is what mostly it's used for, is just awesome. So that's a little introduction. I hope it's not too steep. I'm counting on you having some knowledge about React. So let's go back to the provider. Okay. Sorry, not about React, about JavaScript. Jesus. Yeah, I could just use Git to do that, but anyway. So, what could we do as a first thing? Maybe let's dive into so how would you go about rendering a map here? So if you cloned the Pokered, this is actually downloaded, so if you clone the Pokered repo, this is the oh yeah, a little thing I forgot about the setup. So if you go actually read the setup here, it says we need to clone this guy here. I forgot about it. This is like a Pokemon Red disassembly. It's basically taking the Game Boy original ROM and taking assets out of it and all the assembler files, which is really cool. What we really need from it is the assets. If you download it and open, you will see let's open the poke the directory that we cloned from GitHub in the first place, and this is the Poker master. So what you have to do, you have to create an directly called poke assets and put graphics, data constants, and maps, I guess, here. So this is ignored by Git. It will not get committed to Git because it's not, I don't think it's safe as well in terms of like copyrights, but since it's on the other GitHub, I guess I can just copy it here. And what we're gonna do is, let's just see what's going on here. So there's poke assets, and what we really want to do, want to go to sprites, maybe not. Let's go to tile sets and go to overworld. That's what we're interested in. This is basically most of the texture that build the external maps, not external, like the maps that you start in Pokemon. So basically what you see here, this is a palette down, right? So the way the project is configured is, I already pre-configured it before in Webpack, so when you import stuff, it directly looks up into graphics. Actually, where does it look? Sprites. Well, it's somewhere here. It looks into poke assets. And sprites. Oh, it just looks into poke assets. So what we have to do, so this is Webpack configuration. You don't need to think about it, but basically, when I import from assets, it looks into this folder. But if I import from let's try it. What was that? Graphics, tile sets. So I tricked TypeScript into thinking that there is such a thing as, like, any PNG file is considered to be a valid import. And we haven't found it, so I think it's just without the assets part. Yeah, seems to be alright. So it gets loaded as a base64 image. So what we can do is we can go overworld.source, and voila, here's the texture from Pokemon Red. And let me get a break and I will continue to we'll start doing the rendering of the map. I hope it's easy to understand. Not sure, this is my first time making a tutorial, so we'll see.